The story begins in the Appalachian Mountains, 1892, a region where settlements clung to steep ridges and people could walk for days without crossing another soul. Among the scattered communities was one clearing people rarely discussed: Blackwood Clearing, named after the family who'd settled there decades before. What made it unusual wasn't a single event, but accumulated stories. Voices drifting between trees when no one was there. Lights weaving through woods at night in patterns no lantern could match. And always, the stories led back to three sisters: Miriam, Eliza, and Ruth Blackwood. They lived in a cabin far from any road, rarely seen in town. When one appeared, she came alone, completed her errands quickly, and returned to the ridge without lingering. What unsettled people was how unchanged they seemed by time. Old photographs showed Miriam attending church gatherings in her teens. Yet decades later, newcomers described her exactly as locals had generations before. Before we continue, pause for a moment. Like this video, subscribe for more haunting tales from the Appalachian ridges, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's see how far these mountains reach, stretching across the world, connecting all who dare to listen. Their parents had once been known in town, but their names vanished abruptly from census logs. What remained were the three sisters, staying on that land long after their kin disappeared from every record. Along the lower ridges, livestock vanished without tracks. Barn doors stood open, though no one recalled leaving them that way. Small items went missing, reappearing weeks later in strange arrangements near the forest edge. Quiet speculation linked these occurrences to the clearing, though few dared say so directly. Hunters avoided the steep path toward the Blackwood cabin. Many claimed the woods there felt heavier, as if the air thickened. Whether real or imagined didn't matter. Instinct often mattered more than logic. Yet despite all warnings, three men decided to travel past the line. No one else crossed. By winter of 1892, three capable woodsmen prepared for a routine hunting trip: Thomas Brannock, a guide familiar with every trail; Elias Ward, a trapper who knew each water source; and Caleb Hensley, youngest of the three, known for noticing details others missed. They departed on a clear morning, carrying standard gear, expecting to return within 2 days. Several hours into their journey, conditions shifted. The forest became strangely muted, as if small animals had paused all at once. Trees stood unnervingly still. Snow drifted through air, though the sky remained clear. Near midday, Caleb spotted tracks veering sharply toward Blackwood Clearing, inconsistent prints alternating between hurried strides and faint impressions. The men debated following them but chose to stay their course. Still, Thomas suggested keeping lanterns closer than usual, even during daylight. That evening, they made camp near a narrow stream. The site appeared orderly, fire pit carefully built, gear precisely arranged. But details raised questions. One lantern was missing, firewood stacked unusually high, and a scrap of cloth tied to a branch like a marker. This was the last confirmed evidence all three were together. A traveler passing at dusk reported seeing 3 lanterns moving in formation between trees. Then the rear lantern halted, paused several seconds, and suddenly dropped, as if the person holding it had fallen. The light extinguished instantly. The other 2 stopped briefly, then moved out of sight, leaving the ridge in darkness. Just 3 lights moving across the mountain, 1 falling, 2 pausing, then nothing. The next morning, a search party of 6 men set out. They found the hunters' first camp undisturbed, bedrolls flattened by frost, fire ring intact, footprints leading northward, But inconsistencies emerged. One bedroll left unrolled as if someone stood hurriedly. Gloves positioned neatly, palms up. One lantern missing. Following the trail uphill, they discovered a torn scrap of wool, matching Elias's coat, hanging nearly 10 feet above ground. No footprints beneath the branch. No indication anyone climbed the tree. Ahead, a single boot print stood sharply in snow, angled as if its wearer pivoted suddenly. Then no further prints. The trail simply ended. Late afternoon brought them to where the traveler saw the lanterns fall. They found an indentation where something heavy had dropped, and a thin line carved in snow, as if something had been dragged briefly before being lifted. As they camped that night, the forest remained unnervily calm. No animal calls, no wind, no running water from nearby streams. Several searchers later admitted feeling observed from beyond the tree line, though none spoke it aloud. By morning, they knew their path led toward the region few dared approach, where the Blackwood sisters lived. The Blackwood history stretched to the 1830s, when Thomas Blackwood Sr. purchased mountain land at a price far below its value. The property had changed owners repeatedly, each staying briefly before selling at a loss. Those who knew the area said the real concern wasn't isolation. It was the unnatural silence. No birdsong, no small animals, no wind through the canopy. Hunters reported deer taking wide, deliberate paths around it. When the Blackwood parents settled there with 3 young daughters, nothing seemed unusual at first. They farmed, raised livestock, traded occasionally. The girls were educated at home, rarely seen in town, common for rural mountain families. But within years, stories began. Lamplight deep in the trees past midnight, distant humming drifting down the slope, shapes moving in mist. Neighbors noticed the parents aging rapidly, while the daughters seemed unchanged. The turning point came in winter 1857. After heavy snow, smoke stopped rising from the Blackwood chimney. By spring, concerned neighbors checked on the family. They found the cabin locked from inside, the parents gone without trace. Only the 3 daughters remained, sitting near the hearth, quiet and expressionless. When asked where their parents went, the girls answered, "They went out before the snow." But the parents had been seen after that snowfall. The explanation made no sense. From that moment, the sisters lived alone. For 30 years, they remained isolated, never seeking help, venturing to town only every few years for basic goods. And travelers continued reporting voices from the tree line at night. The sisters moving through woods in complete silence. Livestock disappearing without tracks. By the 1880s, the Blackwood sisters had become a quiet subject of caution, not from danger, but uncertainty. And whenever rare travelers crossed their path, the same observation emerged. The sisters looked exactly as they had decades before. The search party reached the higher ridge by afternoon. From this vantage, the forest below appeared different. Trees unnaturally straight, uniform in height, branches bent in the same direction. Even the snow lay smoother, unbroken where wind should have disturbed it. They descended cautiously. A narrow fence post emerged, half buried, rope hanging in frayed strips despite still air. Beyond it, they found a leather pouch containing Thomas and Caleb's snare hooks, undamaged, deliberately placed, not dropped. Ahead, an old tool shed appeared, door slightly ajar. Inside, dust-covered shelves, unused tools, surfaces coated with frost. But outside, footprints circled the structure, once before vanishing behind it. The same pattern as before, ending at blank snow. Through the branches they saw it, the Blackwood cabin chimney. The building stood alone in a shallow clearing. Steep roof weathered by harsh seasons, windows dark, shutters closed. No smoke rose. No recent tracks marked the path to the door. It sat untouched by the winter covering everything else. They approached slowly. The cabin showed signs of careful maintenance. Certain boards newer than others, small scratches along siding following deliberate patterns. Around the perimeter, shallow footprints formed irregular arcs, some oddly elongated, others partially erased. Firewood was stacked neatly beside the door, freshly cut but undisturbed by prints. Faint indentations marked the door's lock and frame. Not forced entry, but deliberate, precise work. Small stones lined a path from forest to steps, arranged with clear intention. The air felt heavier here, not colder, but compressed by decades of isolation. No birdsong, no crackling frost, no wind, only the soft crunch of snow beneath boots. At the rear, a narrow staircase led to a small loft. Its railing was worn smooth by years of use, yet no footprints indicated recent passage. Marks along windows suggested someone inside observing the perimeter. And throughout, patterns emerged in snow and wood that no one could explain. The sheriff studied the cabin before signaling his men. Whatever answers they sought, and the missing hunters, were likely inside. The door swung open without resistance, revealing a modest room. Rough-hewn table with 3 chairs, stone hearth, shelves lined with jars and herb bundles. Dust swirled in lamplight, but closer inspection revealed unsettling details. On the table, a knife, tin cup, folded papers, arranged precisely, suggesting recent use. Yet no footprints marked the floor. The hearth contained cold ash with darker streaks along inner stones, as if tended with unusual precision. Most jars were dust-covered, but a few showed finger smudges. Someone had been here recently. The loft stairs bore marks of repeated passage, worn smooth. One searcher climbed cautiously. Above, frost covered the planks despite the preserved interior below. Parallel scratches ran along floorboards, deliberate, careful movement. A small hatch in the far wall opened to reveal a shallow compartment containing bundled notes tied with fraying cloth. The precise handwriting documented times, observations, movement patterns around the property. Some entries years old, others recent. One line read, "They come, yet they do not remain." Near the hatch, hand-shaped indentations aligned with a loft beam, suggesting someone used them for leverage. Yet no footprints continued beyond the stairs. In a narrow cavity between beams, they found personal effects carefully arranged. Cloth scraps, a broken clasp, simple tools. Ceremonial in their precision. A soft sound reached them from below. Not footsteps, but deliberate movement, as if the building itself responded. They froze, scanning shadows. Nothing visible. Yet the sensation of observation persisted. Descending, they found more hidden compartments. Papers inside referenced visitors, wind patterns, decades of approaching people. One phrase stood out: "The ones who arrive seldom stay." Behind the hearth, an alcove held tools, rope, and dust-covered objects, ordinary items arranged with methodical care. Then they noticed 3 chairs pulled back slightly from the table, positioned exactly as they'd been decades before. The cabin preserved a memory, waiting for the next visitor to encounter it unchanged. A faint creak above them, from the loft or rafters. They froze. Nothing appeared. Yet the space felt alive, registering their presence without revealing itself. Near the floor beneath the table, they found Caleb's journal, damp but intact. One entry, dated the night before the men vanished, contained a single sentence in hurried script. They were not alone in the cabin. Outside, the clearing revealed more patterns. Faint depressions in snow suggested careful steps, some deeper than others, following a deliberate rhythm. Small branches were arranged along the clearing's edge at precise intervals, guidance or restriction of movement. Footprints appeared that matched none of the searchers' or missing men's boots, adult-sized but erratic, looping impossibly, ending abruptly. Under evergreens lining the northern edge, they found a circle of subtle disturbances. Within it, twigs, bark, ashes from a long-extinguished fire. A location chosen to monitor the clearing, while remaining concealed. Frayed rope led from the circle toward a narrow path between trees, deliberately placed, purpose unclear. A shadow flitted among distant trees, slender, deliberate, fleeting. Lanterns swept the area. Nothing, but the movement confirmed it. Someone maintained control over both cabin and surroundings. Every clue reinforced the pattern. Deliberate observation, concealed presence, control over movement. The missing men had been drawn into a system, their paths monitored and influenced without direct confrontation. As shadows lengthened, the search party gathered their findings. The day had revealed hidden compartments, arranged objects, abruptly ending prints, and clear evidence of decades-long observation. Yet Thomas, Elias, and Caleb remained missing. The sheriff spoke quietly. They'd explored the cabin, documented everything, surveyed the clearing. But the pattern suggested answers lay not just here, but in the combination of cabin, forest, and trails, an invisible system of control extending across the entire ridge. As they prepared to leave, the sheriff paused. Through the evergreens was the faint outline of a path descending deeper into forest, barely noticeable, yet deliberately maintained. No one spoke. Every man understood. The search was far from over. The sheriff signaled to hold position. Lanterns adjusted, notes secured, weapons checked. The clearing seemed to breathe with accumulated history. Every silent corner suggesting the Blackwood sisters' influence reached further than imaginable. They now faced a choice: press down the newly revealed path or retreat to report findings. Either way, they understood one truth. The cabin and surroundings weren't simply a location. They were a domain, meticulously maintained and silently observed. The answers to the missing men's fate and the true extent of the Blackwood sisters' influence waited just beyond the edges of vision. The forest waited, the cabin waited, and the Blackwood sisters, patient and unseen, waited as well. You've glimpsed Blackwood Clearing, but the story isn't finished. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us next week, if you can handle what the mountains are hiding.